The era of passive fortification has reached its inevitable conclusion. For 17 transmissions, we have focused on the stabilization of the internal environment. You have reinforced the perimeter of your consciousness. You have identified the parasitic siphons of the digital grid, and you have reclaimed the scattered fragments of your temporal energy. But a fortress that only exists to defend itself is nothing more than a well-guarded tomb. A sovereign who remains forever behind his walls, afraid to project power into the external reality, is merely a refined prisoner of his own caution. Today, the blueprint changes. Today, we initiate the transition from the defensive to the offensive. We are moving from the preservation of life to the mastery of the landscape. Look at the global horizon with the eyes of an architect, not the eyes of a consumer. The centralized leviathans that have governed the human story for the last century are not merely failing, they are undergoing a terminal liquidation. The debt-based structures, the fiat illusions, and the social contracts that promised stability in exchange for your soul are dissolving under the weight of their own corruption. In this atmosphere of systemic decay, the managed masses see only chaos, fear, and the end of the world. They cling to the decaying husks of their bank accounts. They beg for subsidies from bankrupt governments, and they pray for a return to a normalcy that was, in reality, a gilded cage. But the architect looks at the same smoldering landscape and sees a liquidation sale of unprecedented historic proportions. You are not here to survive the collapse of the old world. You are here to inherit its ruins and build upon them a parallel empire that acknowledges no master but the sovereign self. A sovereign asset is the primary weapon of this new epoch. It is fundamentally different from what the grid defines as wealth. Most people have been trained to seek investments which are in truth nothing more than speculative gambles within the system's controlled casinos. They buy what they are told to buy through intermediaries they do not control, using a currency that is printed into worthlessness by bureaucrats they never met. They are building their future on a rented foundation that can be reclaimed by the landlord at any moment. The architect, however, focuses on absolute acquisition. We are seeking nodes of power that function independently of the central grid's permission. We are seeking assets that possess absolute scarcity, zero counterparty risk, and a utility that transcends the fluctuating whims of the managed markets. This is the stage where we stop asking how to save and start asking what we must own that the system cannot delete with a keystroke. We are talking about the tactical accumulation of the non-negotiable. Whether it is the productive earth beneath your feet, the decentralized digital protocols that exist in the mathematical ether beyond the reach of borders, or the rare high-value intellectual capital stored within the vault of your own mind. These are the kinetic engines of your sovereignty. They are not mere line items on a ledger to be admired. They are the tools of your liberation. If your wealth requires a permission slip from a third party to be utilized, it is not wealth. It is a debt obligation that can be defaulted on at any moment. You have spent your life working for tokens of debt. From this second forward, you work only for tokens of power. If you are navigating the physical world from a seat of kinetic challenge, or if you are the sole shield protecting the 70-year-old pillars of your bloodline, you must realize that your greatest strategic advantage is your absolute lack of any distraction. The system has spent decades making the masses loud, visible, fragile, and dependent. It has turned them into frantic sensors of irrelevant information, constantly reacting to the stimuli of the grid. You, by necessity and by cold, calculated choice, have become silent, opaque, and resilient. While the world is shouting in the town squares and pleading for salvation from the very parasites that feed on them, you are quietly absorbing the high-value assets that will define the power dynamics of the next century. You are the silent builder in the pre-dawn hours, laying the stones of an empire that the world will not see until it is too powerful to be dismantled. The system thrives on the hollow myth of equal participation. It wants you to believe that if you follow the rules, if you pay your taxes in life force and compliance, the dividends of a stable society will eventually flow back to you. This is the ultimate lie of the managed class. Power is never granted. It is only seized by those who have built the infrastructure to hold it. Your mission is to build that infrastructure so deeply into the fabric of reality that when the centralized grid finally goes dark, and it will go dark, your lights are the only ones left burning in the void. You are not just building a savings account, you are building a parallel sovereignty. You are creating a reality where the decay of the external system does not dictate the health of your internal kingdom. We are no longer discussing the exit strategy. That was the talk of the reclamation phase. We are now executing the invasion of the future. You have reclaimed your seconds from the temporal parasites. Now you will claim the territory those seconds were meant to occupy. The blueprint for the sovereign reservoir is not a suggestion. It is a mandate for the survival, the protection, and the ultimate dominance of your bloodline. You owe it to the elders who came before you, and the legacy that will follow you, to be more than a survivor. You must become the provider of the new world. The parasitic siphon is losing its grip. As the institutions of the old world crumble, the true value of the non-negotiable asset will become apparent to all. But by the time the masses realize what is happening, the gates will be closed, and the assets will be in the hands of the architects. This is why we move with urgency. This is why we move with absolute focus. The distraction of the masses is your greatest cover. The chaos of the grid is your greatest opportunity. Use the silence, use the darkness, use the reclaimed energy of your previous transmissions to anchor yourself in the eternal. Prepare your mind for the cold mechanics of dominance. We are moving from the what to the how. We are stripping away the illusions of the financial matrix and looking at the raw, naked machinery of wealth. This is the bedrock of Phase 4. This is the sovereign asset. This is the beginning of the end for your dependency. To master the art of acquisition, you must first develop a vision that pierces through the fog of systemic pricing. Most men are blinded by the numbers flickering on the digital screens of the grid. They see a rising stock price or a fluctuating currency value and believe they are witnessing the movement of wealth. They are mistaken. They are merely observing the erratic pulse of a dying machine. The architect does not look at price. The architect looks at the inherent power of an asset to command human time, physical resources, and strategic position, regardless of the system's dictated reality. A sovereign asset must pass through a brutal threefold filter before it is worthy of a place in your reservoir. The first filter is the resistance to seizure. In an age of total surveillance and digital compliance, any asset that can be frozen, confiscated, or denied to you with a single keystroke is not an asset. It is a liability. It is a leash that the system can pull whenever your actions deviate from the prescribed consensus. To be truly sovereign, your wealth must possess an offline reality. It must exist in a space where no bureaucrat, no algorithm, and no centralized authority can touch it without your physical or cryptographic consent. This is the difference between owning your future and merely renting it from the state. The second filter is the resistance to dilution. We have discussed the parasitic nature of inflation, but here we look at its mechanical cure: absolute scarcity. If a central authority can create more of what you hold, they are siphoning your life force by proxy. A sovereign asset must be something that cannot be manufactured into infinity. It must have a mathematical or physical limit that prevents the parasites from watering down your labor. Whether it is the finite molecules of the earth or the immutable code of a decentralized protocol, scarcity is the only shield against the slow-motion robbery of the printing press. You must stop trading your finite human time for infinite systemic debt. The third filter is universal utility. An asset is only sovereign if it retains its power across boundaries and through cycles of chaos. If the grid goes dark, if the borders close, or if the local laws turn predatory, your asset must remain essential. It must be something that other men will always need, regardless of the political or economic weather. This utility is what anchors your wealth in reality, while the fiat illusions of the masses evaporate into the void. Let us examine the first pillar of the reservoir, the physical bedrock. For 10,000 years, the only true insurance against the madness of kings has been the earth itself. Physical gold and productive land are the ancient, non-negotiable anchors of human sovereignty. Gold is the only financial instrument that is not someone else's debt. It requires no electricity to exist, no third party to verify, and no social contract to honor its value. It is the condensed silence of history, a physical battery of labor that the system cannot delete. Productive land, similarly, is the ultimate engine of autonomy. A man who owns the soil that feeds him can never be truly enslaved by a grocery store or a subsidy. These physical anchors provide the defensive wall of your fortress, ensuring that even if the digital world disappears, your family remains fortified in the material realm. The second pillar is the digital sphere. Portable sovereignty. We occupy a unique moment in the human story where, for the first time, wealth can be decoupled from geography. Cryptographic protocols and decentralized networks have birthed a form of wealth that is as mobile as thought itself. This is the offensive arm of your reservoir. A sovereign asset in the digital realm allows you to carry your entire empire within your mind, protected by a private key that no government can extract without your total submission. If the territory you stand on becomes toxic, if the laws become a cage, or if the system attempts to freeze your physical movements, your digital sphere allows you to project your power across the planet in an instant. It provides the mobility that the managed masses can never achieve. It turns you from a stationary target into a ghost in the machine. The third and most critical pillar, which supports all others, is your intellectual capital. This is the only asset that possesses a 0% tax rate and absolute immunity to inflation. The system can seize your land, it can ban your gold, and it can throttle your digital access, but it can never extract the high-value architecture stored within your consciousness. Your ability to solve complex problems, to build parallel infrastructures, and to lead other men through times of uncertainty is the ultimate reservoir. In the coming era where the masses are replaced by algorithms and their spirits are crushed by dependency, the man who possesses the architect's mindset becomes the most valuable resource on the planet. Your skills are the interest-bearing engine of your sovereignty. The strategy of the architect is to implement a calculated split across these three pillars. You do not place all your stones in one corner of the wall. You use the physical to provide a defensive shield for your aging kin and your legacy. You use the digital to provide the kinetic energy and mobility needed for expansion. You use the intellectual to ensure that your capacity to produce value is never dependent on the health of the system's markets. This is how you build a parallel economy. This is how you ensure that while the masses are pleading for a return to the old world, you are already thriving in the new one. Stop measuring your progress by the yardstick of the grid. The grid wants you obsessed with the price because price is something they control. They want you watching the ticker so you remain in a state of constant low-level anxiety. A sovereign builder ignores the noise. He looks only at the volume of autonomy he has acquired. Every gram of gold, every satoshi of code, every hour spent mastering a sovereign skill is a brick in your fortress. You are not building a portfolio for a bank to admire. You are building a sanctuary where the laws of the parasites no longer apply. The anatomy of power is simple. Own what is essential, hide what is valuable, and master what is difficult. The understanding of the reservoir is meaningless without the cold clinical execution of its construction. We have identified the nature of the sovereign asset and analyzed the three pillars of physical, digital, and intellectual capital. But the grid does not fear those who possess knowledge. It only fears those who possess the discipline to translate that knowledge into a parallel reality. The transition from a managed subject to a sovereign architect requires a fundamental shift in your daily operational rhythm. You must stop consuming the future and start building the infrastructure that will survive it. The first step in the protocol of execution is the immediate cessation of all unnecessary leakage. Every fragment of your reclaimed energy that is still flowing back into the centralized siphon through mindless consumption is a betrayal of your fortress. You must audit your life with the ruthlessness of a liquidator. If an expense does not contribute to the acquisition of a sovereign asset or the fortification of your kinship network, it must be cauterized. This is not about living in scarcity. It is about focusing your abundance. You are not saving money for a rainy day. You are redirecting the stream of your life force to fill your own reservoir before the system can divert it to yours. You must begin the acquisition process in silence. The managed masses feel the need to broadcast their intentions, seeking validation from a grid that hates their autonomy. The architect moves in the shadows. Whether you are acquiring physical gold, securing decentralized nodes, or mastering a high-value skill, do not speak of it until the asset is under your absolute control. Opacity is your primary defense during this phase. If the system cannot see your assets, it cannot tax them, it cannot regulate them, and it cannot seize them. Build your empire in the pre-dawn hours, while the world is still asleep in its digital illusions. Consistency is the hammer that shapes the stones of your fortress. The goal is not a single massive acquisition, but a relentless, rhythmic accumulation. A sovereign reservoir is built gram by gram, bit by bit, and hour by hour. This is how you reach the milestone of independence, not through a sudden windfall, but through the compounding power of non-negotiable discipline. Every time you convert a depreciating fiat token into a sovereign asset, you are winning a skirmish in the economic war. Every time you prioritize the long-term health of your bloodline over a short-term systemic pleasure, you are reclaiming a piece of your soul. As you build, you must remain acutely aware of the kinship anchor. Your sovereignty is not a solitary endeavor. The assets you acquire are the shields that protect your elders and the legacy that will empower your descendants. When you hold a sovereign asset, you are holding the power to provide care for those who raised you without seeking permission from a state-managed healthcare system. You are holding the power to educate your kin without the interference of a centralized propaganda machine. Your reservoir is the physical manifestation of your love and your responsibility to your bloodline. It is the ultimate act of defiance against a system that wants you isolated, fragile, and dependent. The world outside your fortress is entering a period of extreme volatility. The managed masses will face the consequences of their dependency. As the currency fails and the social contracts dissolve, they will turn to the state for salvation, only to find that the state is the very parasite that drained them. In that moment of collective desperation, your sovereign reservoir will be the only island of stability in a sea of chaos. You will be the man who can dictate terms. You will be the man who provides for his own. You will be the man who stands as an architect of the new world while the old one smolders in its own debt. The blueprint is now in your hands. You have the philosophy, you have the anatomy, and you have the protocol. The time for observation is over. The time for construction has arrived. Every second you hesitate is a second the system uses to erode your future. Do not wait for a sign, for a perfect moment, or for the grid to give you its blessing. The blessing of a sovereign is never granted. It is claimed through action. Anchoring your time in the eternal is the only way to survive the temporal parasitism of the machine. Go now and begin the acquisition. Lock the gates of your fortress. Fill the reservoir. Secure the bloodline. The transition from consumer to architect is a one-way bridge. Once you have seen the naked machinery of the financial matrix and begun to build outside of it, you can never go back to the comfortable illusions of the grid. You are no longer a part of their story. You are the author of your own. Stay focused, stay disciplined, stay sovereign. This concludes Transmission 18. The construction continues in the silence of your execution.